Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. I've got a part 2 for you. Okay. Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. I'm here with part 2 to my Medusa sharing that is blah, blah, blah. Okay. Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. I am assuming if you are watching this, you have already watched part 1 of my Medusa story, which was actually not the original story, but a sequel. And I've just realised that I have to come on and share a little bit more because as with, so much of this self-exploration, going into the shadows, unravelling, peeling back layers to see what lies hidden, once you start, it tends to snowball and more and more and more and more layers start to kind of shed and more truths come to the surface. And there's some more sort of insight that has come up as I've continued to work with Medusa and I guess with the archetype, the story, the symbolism over the past few days. And it feels like, yeah, it's important. So I hope you've watched part 1 first. But this was sort of extra insight, extra understanding that has come through that is very relevant because I think, when I talked about in my last video about sort of going into the center of the chart and really trying to integrate, to bring back, to unify or unite Medusa, kind of the original maiden goddess, with the Gorgon, the demon, the monster head, Algol. I understood at the time that this was very much about integration and working with the different polarities and bringing these missing pieces and parts back together so that we could become more whole, so that she could reunite, she could become whole. And as part of that, what happened, I thought I was doing it for somebody else, but I realised that this was part of myself that I was having to reunite with and resurrect and relocate and all of that. So reattach. But what I've been shown in the last 24 hours is that not only does Algol, Medusa's head, in this particular story, and don't forget, there are many, many different myths, many stories, many archetypes, but ultimately they are all trying to bring us back to wholeness, often through shadow and working with or facing up to our foes, our enemies, the parts that we fear the most. And I had sort of up until this weekend thought that Algol represented power and the fear of what happens when your power is unleashed or when your power is tapped into, when it's activated. Is it too much? Is it going to cause harm? But what I hadn't quite made the connection, this has come through really clearly for me this weekend, that actually and this might be obvious to you already, and so I apologize if I'm just kind of sharing what is obvious, and actually it is obvious when I think about it. But Algol in this particular scenario, and this myth, represents the part of ourselves that we are so scared of because it is actually the monster or the demon aspect of the self. The part of the self, the story, the experience, the act, the words, the beliefs, the actions, whatever it is within our past that we are so ashamed of, or so horrified about or from or of, that we have tried to completely cut ourselves off from. We've tried to disconnect, separate, create a massive big abyss between that version, that story, that experience, that action, that behavior, because it is something that we are so fearful of, shocked, about, ashamed of. And I'm talking about, the aspects of ourselves that are the true shadow parts, the lifetimes that we've had and the things that we have done in all different times, dimensions, in different planets, different star systems, here on Earth, elsewhere, where we have done things that do not align with service to others, that do not cannot be categorized as light work or healing work, but because they have been things that have caused harm, or that have created conflict, or have gone against universal law, essentially. And that is actually the biggest element of shadow work. It's being able to see, and as I was shown, the head, the demon, the monster that I was having to bring back, it's actually parts of me where I have been the perpetrator, where I have been the abuser, where I have participated in programs to brainwash and mind control and create and control minds and control actions and distort reality, and all the different kind of things that I talk about regularly on here and in my readings. I have played a part in that, and it's about suddenly having to face those aspects of the self and those parts of the self and those parts of the Akashic records that obviously the higher self knows, the soul knows, it's in the records, it's happened, other souls have witnessed it as well, and being able to sit with it and allow all the emotions that come up, all the shame, all the horror, all the regret, all the guilt. All those emotions that we would normally label as uncomfortable and unwelcome, not particularly pleasant, no fun at all. They are still emotion. It's still energy that needs to move through. And I guess what has become clear is that as we kind of peel back the layers and go deeper into the shadow, which is what we have to do, we have to descend, we have to look at what's hidden, we have to go beneath the surface. Scorpio reminds us of that. That is where the greatest healing, the greatest transformation, the greatest liberation can take place. But it is about sitting with the very dark aspects and seeing them, and not standing in judgment, and not wanting and not trying to disconnect or exile or abandon or cut off, because it's just too much to bear, to think that maybe you have done something in another lifetime. And what came through for me, there's lots and lots of different stories, lots of different visions, lots of different images, video clips come through, memories. Whether they're true or not, I'm actually starting to wonder whether it's just my higher self's way or the universe's way of getting me to connect to certain emotions that may be locked in. And as with story and with myth, it is creating an idea or a picture or a story that I'm going to have a very strong emotional reaction to, that helps me access that emotion. So whether it's true or not, and I've been shown lots of different potential avenues, lots of different timelines, it doesn't matter. It's the reaction, it's the emotion that comes up. And for me in this occasion, seeing that not only, just thinking about the witch wound, not only have I been persecuted, exiled, silenced, suppressed, murdered, burned, hanged, beheaded, all of that, but I have actually been the one who cried witch, who shopped my sisters, my friends, to the authorities to try and keep myself safe, who participated in a lot of the programming, and in Orion and in Atlantis and other lifetimes, other places. And that's not something that I particularly want to entertain, because, when you're here as a light worker and in service and you're trying to help people and support people and guide, to suddenly be faced with aspects of the self that perhaps, are in complete contravention to that, that's where the shadow lies. And that is where the real gold lies. And, having to sit with that and face that and, you know, accept that, stand there with no judgment, move through and push through the fear of, you know, even coming on and sharing something like this here. You know, what are people going to think? And this is what Medusa is trying to show us. We have to be prepared to see all of the self, even the parts, the demonized, the monster parts. You know, we live in a polarized reality. We cannot just be on one side of the playing field. You know, if we've experienced victimhood, which we have also been the perpetrator. If we have been abused, we have also been the abuser. You know, if we have been cut off and abandoned and exiled, we've also been played a part in where we have exiled someone or cut someone off. We have to play both sides, because that is part of the game, that's part of the reality that we are in. And so it's realizing, and this is coming to me through Medusa, but obviously, you know, we all have our different paths and our different ways to access insight. For me, it's through asteroids, it's through astrology, but, you know, for others it might be completely different. But regardless of how it's coming to you, I'm feeling that we're now going through this time where we have to sit with the most uncomfortable aspects of self, the parts that we really don't want to see, the parts where we have been the villain, you know, where we have been the shadow, where we have worked with the darkness, and stand there and allow whatever comes up. And, you know, there's going to be a flood of emotions, and I can speak from experience, and it's still ongoing. All the discomfort, the shock, the horror, the regret that, oh my God, how could I possibly have done that? And can I change it? Can I delete it? No. The answer is no. You have to sit there and you have to allow it to come forward, because it's part of the whole, it's part of the self. And unless we are able to see it, witness it, recognize it, accept it, start to love it, and that's possibly the hardest part, but that is like the most powerful. And, you know, and then bring it in and sort of remove that separation and allow it to come in. That is where the true healing, the true transformation, the true empowerment is accessed. And I guess, you know, with the whole story of Medusa turning you to stone, if you're not able to look at the monster and not see, you know, those parts of you that you'd rather not look at, that you really don't want to see, that perhaps you judged to be really evil in other people or in other actions and other behaviors and other mindsets, to be able to see that everything is just a reflection of the self ultimately. And, you know, if we deny it, Medusa turns you to stone. She creates this numbness, you know, she removes life force, she locks it into something that, you know, cannot move. There can be no motion of energy because it's suddenly locked in, it's petrified. And it's about, you know, that's kind of her message. And that's the story, that's the message in the myth here. We need to be able to look at what we have not wanted to see before and allow the emotions to move through, and trust that, yes, they're going to come up and they're going to feel bloody awful. Excuse my French. Excuse my excuse my language. But that's part of it. You have to allow it to come in. And if you are able to, and this has happened so many times to me, and it continues to be, you know, the hardest thing to do. But if you're able to allow the shadow to come in, the shame, the guilt, all those emotions that you would rather not kind of have to deal with, if you're able to allow them to come in and flow through, that is what they'll do. They move through, because emotion is energy in motion. You have to allow it to flow. If you keep it locked in or suppressed or trapped, it just becomes blockage, and it will get louder and louder and more uncomfortable until you can't ignore it. And I feel that we are going through this profound time where all these deeply buried, locked, trapped sort of fears, memories, emotions, beliefs, associations, everything is being shaken up. And it's because we have to sit with it. And that is how we become whole. That's how we remember who we are. We remember, the whole, all the different parts, all the different aspects of self. Some we may love, some we may detest, but we have to see it all. We have to bring it all back in. And I'm just as clear as day, that was the message that Medusa and Algol, and the whole Medusa facing her head in that center, and me being a part of that, and having to take the monster head and almost wear it myself. And what would happen when people saw the true me? Would they reject me? Would they sort of shun me? Would they be just as horrified as I am? Would I be abandoned again? Or as I have abandoned that part of myself? Or can I see it from a completely neutral soul perspective, remove the judgment, remove the attachment, and just allow it to be, and accept that we have all been every single archetype. We've all played every single role in every single myth. And it's about remembering that we are dark and light. And if what I'm saying is triggering, then I think that's the whole point. I'm being shown very clearly that I am working a lot with integrity in this lifetime, and speaking my truth, and pushing through all the resistance and all the fears that come up with that role. But it's clear as day in my chart, and there are a lot of transits taking place at the moment that are taking me into the depths to explore those parts of myself that I have kept hidden, because it has just been too much to look at. But this is the whole point. We cannot continue to deny ourselves, to deny parts of the self. We have to be able to stand and see all of the self in its full, glorious, amazing, but also dark, messy, dirty, terrifying expression. It's about bringing it all back in. So that's kind of what Medusa was trying to show me. And it's not for the faint of heart, but it feels important to share, because I feel that this is going to be happening for a lot of us. And again, it's just remembering that we only get what we can take. We've already kind of designed what we're going to work through in this lifetime from a much higher place, and we know we've created all these situations so that we can support our own healing, so that we can transform and transmute, so that we can be leaders, role models. We do the work, and so that other people can see how it's done, and maybe start to follow suit if that is part of their soul work, if that is where they're meant, if that's what they're meant to do in this lifetime. So it's there we are, there it is. So let me know what you think, as always. And I don't know if there'll be a part 3. There might be. It seems to be the week for craziness. And especially as we move up to the lunar eclipse in Pisces. There's a lot going on, a lot of dissolving, a lot of endings, a lot of a lot of karma sort of been worked through. But again, this is part of it. And we came here, we signed up, we agreed. We might have forgotten and we might have changed our minds, but we don't have that option. We've just got to keep pushing through, and we can do this. So thank you so much. Sending lots of love.